How to be more eloquent and persuasive. Master the skills of effective communication. Introduction. We live in a world where words can open doors, or close them forever. The way we communicate has the power to transform a casual conversation into a life-changing opportunity, a conflict into an agreement, a thought into action. Language is not just a tool for exchanging information. It's a bridge between our mind and the world around us. Through communication, we influence, inspire, connect, lead. Every time we speak, we're either building or destroying, moving closer or pushing away, creating or losing opportunities. That's why understanding and mastering communication isn't just a useful skill. It's a vital necessity for anyone who wants to move forward in life with intention. Think about this. Everything you desire is just one conversation away. That person who could offer you an opportunity, that partner you could fall in love with, that client you need to close, that conflict you've been avoiding for years, it's all waiting for a conversation you haven't had yet, or haven't known how to have. Often we believe we need more degrees, more contacts, more experience, more luck. But most of the time what we really need is to know how to say what we feel, what we want, what we think, in a way that resonates, that is heard and understood. Life is built with words, and those who master words, master their destiny. Being eloquent doesn't mean speaking beautifully. It's not about decorating your speech with complex vocabulary or sounding like a book. True eloquence is born from inner clarity. It's the ability to express ideas, emotions, and intentions with strength, precision, and purpose. It's having a voice that not only gets heard, but that gets felt. Being eloquent means touching minds, but also hearts. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to persist and when to listen, when to raise your voice and when to lower it. It's about communicating not to impress, but to connect. Because in the end, people won't remember everything you said, but they will remember how your words made them feel. In this audiobook, you're going to learn how to use your voice as a tool of power. But I won't promise you any magic formulas. There are no shortcuts when it comes to such a deeply human skill. What you will find here is a practical and profound guide, based on the universal principles of effective communication. We'll explore together how to overcome the fear of speaking, how to organize your ideas, how to express yourself clearly, how to use your body and energy to reinforce your message, how to tell stories that capture attention, how to persuade without manipulating, how to speak in difficult situations, and how to have conversations that leave a lasting mark. This isn't just an audiobook to listen to once. It's a foundation you can return to whenever you need to fine-tune your inner and outer voice. And it doesn't matter where you're starting from. Maybe you feel like you don't express yourself well. Maybe your voice trembles when you speak in front of others. Maybe you say things you later regret, or you just struggle to find the right words. Wherever you're beginning, this journey is designed for you. Because communication is not a gift reserved for a few. It's a skill that can be trained, shaped, and expanded over time with practice. We can all learn to speak better, to listen more deeply, to connect more honestly. We can all become more eloquent and persuasive if we're willing to learn and practice. I invite you to listen to this audiobook with attention, but also with openness. Not just to retain ideas, but to start applying them. Pause when something resonates with you. Repeat it if needed. Make it yours. Reflect on your past conversations, on how you could have said something differently, with more intention, more calm, more clarity. Imagine future conversations where you can apply what you've learned. This is not a theoretical path. It's training for real life. Because communicating better doesn't just make you more persuasive. It makes you more human, more empathetic, more aware of the impact you have on others. Keep this in mind throughout the process. Your voice is your most powerful instrument. Don't let fear, doubt, or habit silence what you have to say. Eloquence is not a luxury. It's a path to more authentic relationships, more real opportunities, and a life more aligned with who you truly are. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and get ready to begin this journey. Because what comes next isn't just theory, it's a life practice. And like always, it all begins with a conversation. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the powerful content that's coming. And now, take a moment to write in the comments which city you're listening from, and if this message is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button now. That way, you won't miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer, day by day, to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to lose. Now, let's continue. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Eloquence. When we think of an eloquent person, we often picture someone who speaks with sophisticated words, who never stumbles, who seems to have a brilliant response for everything. But that image, though popular, isn't entirely accurate. True eloquence isn't measured by how flowery your vocabulary is or how perfect a sentence sounds, but by the ability to make what you say carry meaning, emotion, and direction. Being eloquent is knowing how to reach both the mind and heart of the other person through your words. It's about being clear, being human, and above all, being intentional. It's not about sounding like a professional speaker. It's about making your words precisely reflect what you think, feel, and want to convey. It's about turning your ideas into bridges that connect with others. One of the biggest myths about communication is that it's a natural talent only a few are born with. People say some have the gift of gab or a way with words, as if eloquence were an innate talent reserved for a lucky few. But that's simply not true. Communication, like any other skill, can be learned, practiced, and improved. It's true that some may have a head start, but if they don't nurture it, they'll stagnate. On the other hand, someone who is shy, quiet, or insecure can become a powerful communicator over time if they commit to practicing. Another common myth is that good communication means talking a lot, that the more someone talks, the more in control they are. But in reality, the opposite is often true. The more someone talks, the less they actually say. True mastery lies in knowing how to say what matters most, at the right moment, with the right words and tone. There's also the myth that to be heard, you have to impress. That's why many fall into the trap of over-embellishing, speaking in a convoluted way, or trying to sound smart rather than authentic. And that only pushes people away. Because what creates connection isn't complexity, it's clarity. It's not the number of words, but the quality of what's being communicated. When you speak from a sincere place, with intention and respect, your message reaches further, even if your words are simple. Eloquence doesn't seek to dazzle, it seeks to connect. And that connection is what leaves a lasting impact. Because a simple sentence, said with authenticity, can be more powerful than an entire speech filled with empty jargon. It's important to understand that speaking well isn't the same as communicating with impact. Many people speak well. They have good diction, a pleasant voice, even an extensive vocabulary. But still, they fail to generate interest, empathy, or action in those who listen. That's because speaking well is a technical skill, while communicating with impact is an emotional one. It's the difference between sounding good and being memorable, between being heard and truly being listened to. Communicating with impact means ensuring that your message doesn't just pass through someone's ears, it reaches their mind and leaves a mark. And that takes more than the right words, it takes connection. That connection arises when the speaker is aligned with their message, when their words are in harmony with their body, their tone, their energy. Because language is not just verbal. There's something perceived beyond the phrases, your presence. That presence is conveyed through your gaze, your pauses, the confidence or hesitation you emit without even realizing it. An eloquent person doesn't just master language, they master themselves. They're aware of how they move, how they breathe, how their energy shapes how others perceive them. And that's something you can train. It's not a mystical gift. It's a constant practice of self-awareness and expression. To begin developing this eloquence, you must first observe. Observe yourself. How do you speak? Do you stumble? Do you rely on filler words? Do you go on too long? Do you interrupt? Do you lose focus? There's no judgment here, only honest observation. The first step to communicating better is being aware of how you're currently doing it. From there, you can begin to refine, not to change who you are, but to remove what gets in your way. Because we all already have an authentic voice. What happens is that it's often buried under layers of fear, insecurity, limiting beliefs, or bad habits. And those layers can be peeled away, with practice, with intention, with attention. Once you understand that eloquence isn't a luxury reserved for speakers, but a tool for everyday life, everything changes. You start to notice that every conversation is an opportunity to practice. That talking to a friend, presenting an idea at work, asking for something in a store, these are moments where you're tuning your instrument. It's not about speaking only when you're on a stage. It's about living with conscious communication. Because if you learn to communicate better in your daily life, when an important moment arrives, a job interview, a negotiation, a presentation, you'll already be ready. You won't have to fake eloquence. You'll have cultivated it. Remember this, impactful communication isn't about volume, it's about alignment. It's not how much you say, but how you make the other person feel with what you say. True eloquence doesn't seek to convince, it seeks to connect. It doesn't aim to dominate, it aims to inspire. And that kind of communication doesn't just transform your relationships, it transforms your life. Because when you speak with clarity, confidence, and intention, people understand you better, respect you more, and feel closer to you. Eloquence, then, isn't the final goal. It's the path to becoming someone whose voice carries value, weight, and meaning. And in a world full of noise, that is a superpower. Chapter 2. How to overcome the fear of speaking. The fear of speaking in public, or even in important conversations, takes many forms. It doesn't always show up as visible trembling. Sometimes it disguises itself as perfectionism, that need to have everything absolutely under control before opening your mouth. Other times, it shows up as avoidance, skipping meetings, declining invitations to participate, always handing the floor to others. It can even wear the mask of procrastination, putting off preparing a presentation due to an unconscious fear of facing it. But at the core, all of these behaviors are just mechanisms to protect us from what we believe is dangerous: the judgment of others. We fear not being enough. That what we say won't be interesting, or won't sound smart, or won't make the right impression. But underneath it all lies a trap. The trap of trying to control how we are perceived. And the truth is, we can't fully control anyone's perception. The only thing we can control is being authentic, clear, and generous with our intention. When we stop obsessing over how we're going to sound and instead focus on what we truly want to say, fear loses its power, because someone else's judgment no longer defines our worth. A powerful emotional tool for confronting this fear is self-acceptance, recognizing that you don't need to be perfect to communicate well. That making a mistake doesn't take away your value. That a pause, a correction, or a brief lost gaze doesn't ruin your message. On the contrary, they humanize it. And that creates more connection than any perfectly polished phrase ever could. In fact, people connect more with someone who is genuine, who shows their humanity, who dares to be vulnerable, than with someone who sounds like a robot programmed not to fail. Imagine for a moment that every time you speak in front of someone, you're not taking a test, you're giving a gift. That's the true essence of communication. It's not about passing or failing. It's about sharing a part of yourself, your ideas, your perspective, your voice. If you can make that mindset shift, from "I have to do this right" to "I want to share something valuable," you'll notice a deep transformation in how you speak, and over time, in how you relate to others. It's also helpful to create small personal rituals before speaking. These rituals serve as anchors. They can be physical, mental, or emotional. Some people take deep breaths. Others visualize their message coming through clearly and powerfully. Some repeat affirmations like, "I am ready," or "I trust my voice." Whatever ritual you choose should resonate with you. The important thing is that it reminds you that you're prepared, that you have something meaningful to say, and that you don't need anyone's permission to express yourself. Over time, this ritual becomes a signal to your mind and body that you've been here before, and you can do it again. Another way to reduce stage fright is to gradually expose yourself to speaking situations. You don't need to jump straight into addressing 100 people. Start in safe spaces, a personal conversation where you speak up more, a work meeting where you share an opinion, a small group where you give a brief presentation. Each of these experiences is a step. And the goal isn't to do it perfectly, it's to do it. Progress comes through accumulation. And every time you put yourself out there, even with nerves, you're training your system to understand that there is no real danger, that you can survive, and even enjoy, the act of speaking. It also helps to reframe the relationship you have with your voice. Many people who fear speaking have been criticized or mocked in the past. They've been told they're too quiet, that their voice is strange, that they don't know how to express themselves. And those wounds, even if they seem small, stay buried. That's why healing that relationship is crucial. Recognize that your voice is yours. That it doesn't have to sound like anyone else's. That it holds value simply by being authentic. When you regain confidence in how you express yourself, even if you still have areas to improve, something unlocks. And in that freedom, eloquence begins to grow. There's a key moment that happens when you stop resisting fear and start accepting it. That moment when you realize you can speak even with shaking legs, that you can express your idea even if your voice trembles at first. That's when you discover your true strength. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of it. And every time you choose to speak despite your insecurities, you're building a stronger, freer, more powerful identity. With practice, fear begins to change shape. It stops being a wall that blocks you and becomes a signal that you're doing something that matters. That you're making progress. The day you speak in front of others without feeling the need to hide is the day you realize how far you've come. And not because the fear disappeared, but because it no longer controls you. You've tamed it, transformed it, made it your ally. In the end, the fear of speaking is also a sign that your voice matters. If it didn't, you wouldn't be afraid to use it. And that's the great shift, learning to see fear not as an obstacle, but as an invitation. An invitation to take your place, to express your truth, to connect with the world from who you truly are. Because when you dare to speak, even trembling, you're doing far more than communicating. You're freeing a part of yourself that's been waiting to be heard. And every time you do it, you're teaching your mind, your body, and your story that you no longer need to hide. That you're no longer that person who freezes. You're someone who expresses, who takes risks, who shows up. And that, over time, transforms not only how you speak, but who you are. Chapter 3. Clarity above all. Speaking with clarity is not a skill that appears spontaneously. It is the direct reflection of a deeper internal process, thinking clearly. The quality of our words is intimately tied to the quality of our thoughts. That's why when someone speaks in a confusing, disorganized, or vague manner, it's not just a problem of vocabulary or expression. More often than not, it's the result of thoughts that haven't yet been properly structured. On the other hand, when someone expresses themselves precisely, simply, and directly, you can tell they've taken the time to reflect, to distill their message, and organize it internally. This principle is essential. Mental order leads to verbal order. So if you want to improve your communication, the first step is to develop the habit of thinking before you speak. This isn't about censoring or inhibiting yourself, but about respecting the process of shaping your ideas before delivering them. Thinking before speaking means taking a pause, even a brief one, to ask yourself, what do I really want to say? What is the core of this idea? What is the purpose of what I'm about to communicate? These questions force you to clear the mental fog, to separate what's essential from what's not, to gain perspective. Sometimes, just a few seconds of silence are enough to find the right phrase. In a world that values speed, pausing may seem like a weakness, but in reality, it's a sign of communicative maturity. Someone who allows themselves to pause before speaking shows respect for others and for themselves. Because they're not speaking just to speak, they're speaking to contribute, to build, to connect. One of the keys to speaking with clarity is learning how to simplify without diminishing. Many people believe that speaking in a complex way is a sign of intelligence. But the truth is, real intelligence shows when you can explain complex things in a simple way. It's not about cutting content or falling into shallowness. It's about translating complexity into understandable language. This requires synthesis, hierarchy, and precision. And that work begins in the mind. That's why, before you speak, ask yourself, how can I say this in a way that anyone, even someone with no background knowledge, can understand? If you can do that, you're communicating with depth, without losing clarity. A powerful tool for simplifying ideas is the use of analogies. Analogies help compare a new concept to something familiar, creating a bridge between the abstract and the concrete. For example, if you want to explain the importance of silence in a conversation, you might say, silence in a conversation is like the space between notes in a song. Without that space, the music becomes noise. These kinds of tools help your listener visualize, feel, and emotionally connect with what you're saying. They also make your message more memorable, because ideas aren't just understood with logic, they're also felt through imagination. Another way to ensure clarity is to stick to one idea per sentence. Often, in trying to say everything at once, we end up saying nothing at all. The listener's mind needs time to process, organize, and connect the concepts. If you cram too many ideas together without pause or structure, your message gets diluted. But if each sentence contains a clear, concrete, well-defined idea, communication flows like a well-directed river. And if you add examples, pauses, and logical structure, you exponentially increase the listener's ability to follow, understand, and remember you. Wordiness, talking excessively, without direction or filter, is one of the biggest enemies of effective communication. It often comes from insecurity. We think that if we talk more, we'll seem wiser, more convincing, more important. But the opposite happens. The more you speak without adding value, the more your presence fades. Because words, like money, lose value when used excessively without purpose. Talking a lot is not the same as communicating well. In fact, great speakers and communicators are known for saying a lot with few words. They understand that every word counts. That silence also speaks. That impact doesn't come from quantity, but from intention and quality. To avoid falling into wordiness, it's crucial to develop the ability to listen, both to others and to yourself. When you listen to yourself as you speak, you can detect if you're repeating ideas, if you're going off track, if you're speaking on autopilot. That internal listening is like a radar that helps keep you on course. You can also observe the other person's reactions. If you notice disconnection, confusion, or distraction, it's time to pause, to reframe, to ask if you're being clear. Communication is not a monologue. It's an ongoing dialogue with the other person's attention. Another valuable technique is to write down what you want to say, even if you don't plan to read it later. The act of writing forces your mind to organize, to choose, to refine. Many times, what you can't express well out loud is something you haven't yet thought through clearly. Writing gives you that clarity. Even if you later improvise, you'll have trained your thinking to go straight to the point. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You can also practice clarity by recording yourself speaking. Listening to yourself can be revealing. It helps you notice unnecessary filler words, overly long sentences that could be shorter, or ideas that need more structure. The goal isn't to judge yourself or seek perfection. It's to build awareness of your style and refine it with intention. Speaking with clarity is an act of generosity. It shows that you value the other person's time and attention. That you're not trying to impress, but to contribute. That you're not looking to prove how much you know, but to ensure that others understand and feel what you mean. That's why the best communicators are not the loudest, the fastest, or the most sophisticated. They're the clearest, the ones who make ideas accessible, relatable, real. In the end, clarity is born from respect. Respect for your message, your audience, and yourself. And when you speak from that place, everything changes. Your words carry more weight, travel farther, leave a mark. Because they're not meant to shine on their own, but to light something up in others. And that, ultimately, is what turns communication into a powerful human art. Chapter 4. The Power of Body Language. When we talk about effective communication, we often think only about words, what we say. But the truth is, verbal language is only one part of the message we transmit. In fact, many studies show that a large portion of communicative impact comes from what's not said. The tone of voice, the silences, the gaze, the gestures, the posture. This silent but deeply expressive dimension is what we call body language. And understanding it, better yet, mastering it, can be the difference between simply speaking and truly connecting. Because people don't just listen with their ears, they perceive us with their eyes and feel us with their skin. And it's at that sensory level where it's decided whether what we say feels convincing, authentic, and worthy of attention. The body speaks, always. Even when we believe we're being silent, our posture, facial expression, and movements are sending constant signals. And what's most fascinating is that many of those signals are unconscious, meaning they can reveal much more than what we try to hide. That's why, if we say one thing but our body expresses another, the message becomes fractured. The coherence between what is said and what is projected is key. People may not know exactly what feels off, but they sense it. They detect a disconnect. And that weakens our credibility. On the other hand, When there's alignment, when our words and our body say the same thing, a powerful energy arises. Authenticity. And it's from that place that communication becomes truly persuasive. One of the first elements of body language we should pay attention to is posture. An upright posture, with relaxed but open shoulders, head held high, and feet firmly planted, projects confidence. You don't have to exaggerate or seem stiff. On the contrary, it's about finding a balance between firmness and naturalness. Your posture communicates whether you're present, whether you believe in what you're saying, whether you're open to others, or, conversely, tense, closed off, or disconnected. A person who slouches, avoids taking up space, crosses their arms defensively, or appears to shrink is sending a message of insecurity or withdrawal, even if their words suggest otherwise. Gestures also play a fundamental role. Our hands, for example, can emphasize ideas, give rhythm to our words, and bring energy to our message. But it's important that gestures be natural, congruent, and timely. It's not about moving your arms constantly or turning your message into a performance. It's about allowing your body to support your message. Gestures should amplify, not distract. And to achieve that, the first step is to release rigidity. Let the body express itself without forcing it. If your thinking is clear and your emotion is aligned with your message, gestures will flow organically. But if you try to force them to appear convincing, it shows. And what is fake never truly connects. Eye contact is another crucial element. Looking someone in the eyes creates connection. It's a way of saying, I'm here with you. I see you. I acknowledge you. But it's also an act of courage because it requires presence, vulnerability, and being truly in the moment. Many people, out of nervousness or insecurity, avoid looking at others. They lower their gaze, look at the floor, the ceiling, or a fixed point in the distance. But in doing so, they're missing out on one of the most powerful tools of communication. The secret to eye contact isn't to stare without blinking like a statue, it's to create a visual rhythm. Look into their eyes, gently look away, then return. This rhythm allows you to breathe without losing the bond. Good eye contact communicates trust, honesty, and openness. And that is exactly what your audience is looking for, often without even realizing it. Stage presence is the sum of all these elements. Posture, gestures, gaze, breathing, energy. But beyond the physical, presence has an emotional and mental dimension. It means truly being in the here and now, with your body, your mind, and your heart fully engaged in what you're saying. That kind of presence is palpable. When someone is fully present, their communication resonates. They don't need to shout or exaggerate. Their mere way of inhabiting the space draws attention. And this is something you can train, starting with small habits like breathing deeply before speaking, making conscious pauses, releasing bodily tension, and anchoring yourself in the moment. Presence is magnetic, because in a world full of distractions, being truly present is a revolutionary act. However, none of these elements of body language work if they aren't aligned with your internal message. If you say something you don't believe, defend an idea you don't feel, or try to appear as someone you're not, your body will betray you. That's why beyond learning techniques, you must work on authenticity. What does that mean? It means that before polishing your external expression, you need to examine your inner conviction. Do you believe in what you're saying? Do you feel what you're communicating? Are you connected to your purpose when you speak? When the answer is yes, your body will find its natural way to support your message. You won't need to force gestures, mimic postures, or rehearse smiles, because everything will flow from a solid foundation. The coherence between what you think, feel, say, and project. A great exercise for improving body language is to record yourself speaking, not to harshly judge, but to observe with curiosity. Notice how you move, what your face expresses, how you use your hands, how you maintain eye contact. This self-observation builds awareness. And with that awareness, you can make subtle adjustments, without losing your naturalness. You can also practice in front of a mirror, not to perfect yourself, but to recognize yourself. See how your expression transforms when you speak with passion, with joy, with conviction. And from there, learn to trust your own nonverbal language as a tool for connection. Because the body doesn't lie. And when you listen to it, when you integrate it, when you allow it to accompany your voice with truth, then your whole being becomes the message. Your posture says, I'm present. Your eyes say, I see you. Your gestures say, this matters to me. Your silence says, I trust. And on that level of coherence, communication is no longer just information. It becomes an experience. An experience that touches, transforms, and leaves a lasting mark. Chapter 5. Speaking with Intention. Speaking with intention is one of the clearest signs of communicative mastery. It's not just about having a good voice, speaking fluently, or having a broad vocabulary. Speaking with intention means that every word, every pause, every inflection of your voice has a reason for being. It means that what you say doesn't come from an automatic impulse or the need to fill silence, but from a conscious decision to communicate something with weight, with value, with direction. Because when you speak with intention, your message gains depth, and your presence becomes magnetic. You're no longer just someone producing sounds. You become someone projecting meaning. The first step to speaking with intention is learning to choose your words with purpose. Every word you use creates an effect, paints a picture, evokes an emotion. Not all words communicate the same thing, even if they are synonyms. Saying, I need you to listen to me, is not the same as saying, I want to share something important with you. One expresses urgency or neediness. The other conveys openness and personal value. Choosing words with purpose doesn't mean speaking formally or artificially. It means speaking consciously. It's understanding that language shapes reality. That with your words, you can build bridges or erect walls, spark motivation or plant doubt, open possibilities or close doors. Speaking with intention also means mastering the power of the pause. A pause is not empty space. It's a powerful resource that gives weight to what you've just said and builds anticipation for what you're about to say. In silence, the message settles, resonates, and is processed. A well-placed pause can be worth more than 100 rushed words. It's in that space that the listener has time to emotionally connect, to reflect, and to prepare for what's next. Without pauses, speech becomes an unbroken stream that overwhelms and confuses. With pauses, it becomes a melody, with rhythm and meaning. Tone of voice is another key element of intention. With the same verbal content, tone can express tenderness or sarcasm, excitement or indifference, confidence or hesitation. Tone has the power to either ignite or dull the impact of your words. That's why speaking with intention means being connected to the emotion you want to convey. It's not about performing or overacting. It's about being present with your real emotion. If you speak with passion, let your tone express it. If you speak with respect, let it be felt in your voice. If you speak with compassion, let your energy support it. Tone is the soul of your message. And when it's aligned with your purpose, it becomes unforgettable. Rhythm is also part of intention. A monotonous rhythm puts people to sleep. A rhythm that's too fast creates confusion. A dynamic rhythm, with natural variation, captures and sustains attention. Speaking with rhythm doesn't mean speaking quickly. It means speaking with cadence. Knowing when to speed up to build emotion, and when to slow down to emphasize. Rhythm is like the beat of a song. It sets the pulse of your message. When you sync the rhythm of your words with your listener's attention, a communicative dance takes place. They listen not only to what you say but to how you say it. And this leads to a crucial point. How to avoid speaking just to speak. Often, we fill space with words out of fear of silence, insecurity, or a need for validation. But speaking just to speak dilutes your message, exhausts your listener, and drains your energy. Eloquence isn't about saying a lot. It's about saying just enough with maximum impact. That's why, before speaking, ask yourself, does what I'm about to say add value? Does it make sense in this moment? Is it aligned with the purpose of the conversation? If the answer is yes, say it with conviction. If you're unsure, it might be better to stay silent and wait for the right moment. Silence, far from being a threat, can be your greatest ally. A well-timed silence can grab attention, mark a turning point, or create space for reflection. Great speakers are not afraid of silence. They honor it. They know that silence, when it comes from presence, is a higher form of communication. Because in silence, the other person can hear themselves. And that creates a deeper, longer-lasting connection. Speaking with intention also means having clarity about the effect you want to create. Do you want to inspire, persuade, guide, comfort, challenge? Each intention requires a different way of saying the same thing. And when your intention is clear, your words naturally find the right tone, rhythm, and form. Intention guides expression. And if you stay connected to it, you avoid rambling, filler, and noise. Finally, speaking with intention is an act of respect. Respect for your message, because you value it. Respect for yourself, because you recognize your communicative power. And respect for others, because you don't take their attention for granted. Every time you speak with intention, you're saying, "This deserves to be heard." And that commitment is noticeable. Because when you speak from your center, from your purpose, from inner connection, your words become arrows. Not just reaching the ear, but touching the heart. Speaking with intention is, at its core, living with intention. It's being present in what you do, saying only what matters, acting with clarity, and communicating with purpose. It doesn't matter whether you're speaking on a stage, in a meeting, or in a private conversation. Intention turns the ordinary into something extraordinary. Because when your words come from an authentic place, everything you say comes alive. And that life, when shared, has the power to transform. Chapter 6. The Art of Listening. To truly listen is one of the most powerful and underrated skills in the world of communication. While many people strive to speak better, to persuade, to stand out, very few dedicate the same level of effort to developing active listening. And yet, that is where the key to deep human connection lies. Because when someone feels genuinely heard, without interruptions, without judgment, without distractions, they open up. They let their guard down. They trust. And it is in that state of openness that true persuasion happens. Not as manipulation, but as genuine influence rooted in empathy and presence. Listening well not only improves our relationships, it also enhances our ability to communicate with impact, because it allows us to understand others better and respond from alignment rather than ego. Active listening goes far beyond hearing words. It means giving your full attention to the other person. Not just with your ears, but with your eyes, your body, your mind, and your heart. It means receiving the message without already planning your reply, without rushing to offer advice, without needing to be right. It's giving the other person the gift of your complete presence. And that gesture, which may seem simple, is deeply transformative. In a world where everyone wants to speak, being the one who knows how to listen makes you memorable. Because listening well communicates something powerful: you matter. Making others feel heard doesn't require sophisticated techniques. It requires authentic intention. Sustained eye contact, a gentle nod, a facial expression that reflects what the other is saying, a body that leans slightly forward, these all convey attentiveness. So do simple phrases like "I understand," "That must have been difficult," or even a silence full of presence. The key is not to interrupt, not to fill silences out of discomfort, not to jump in with your own story. Listening is allowing the other person to take up space without feeling like they have to defend it. It's offering them a stage where they can express themselves freely, without fear of being invalidated. One of the most effective ways to improve your listening is to practice reflective listening, paraphrasing what the other person said to confirm you understood them. It's not about repeating their words like a robot, but about capturing the essence and reflecting it back in your own way. For example, if someone says, "I feel overwhelmed with all this work," you might respond, "It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure lately." This kind of response shows that you were paying attention and that you connected emotionally to what was said. And that creates a powerful sense of validation. Another useful technique is to ask open-ended questions that invite deeper reflection. Instead of asking, "Are you okay?" you might say, "What's been the hardest part of this for you?" Or, "What would you like to see change in this situation?" Open questions show genuine interest and give the other person space to explore their thoughts. But be careful. Listening is not interrogating. It's not about bombarding the other person with questions out of curiosity or a need to control the conversation. It's about accompanying them with sensitivity, knowing when to speak and when to simply be silent. Interpretation is also a fundamental part of good listening. Because we don't just hear words, we also hear what's behind them: emotions, intentions, contradictions. Sometimes someone says, "It doesn't matter to me," but their tone and body language say otherwise. Learning to read that subtext takes sensitivity and attention. It's not about making assumptions, but about being tuned in to what is communicated beyond the verbal. And if appropriate, you can check in respectfully. I get the sense this affects you more than you're letting on. Am I wrong? That openness to nuance enriches the dialogue and shows deep listening. Listening also improves your own communication. The better you understand others, the more precise you can be in your responses. You become more strategic, more empathetic, more impactful. Because now you're not speaking on autopilot, you're speaking from connection. Listening allows you to adapt your language, tone, and words so they truly land. And that's essential if you want to persuade, influence, or inspire. Listening doesn't take the spotlight away from you. On the contrary, it gives you a quiet and powerful advantage. It's also important to learn to listen to yourself. Often we're so focused on communicating outward that we forget to connect with our own inner voice. Listening to what we feel, what we think, what we need, is also part of being eloquent. Because the more aligned we are with ourselves, the more authentic our expression becomes with others. Listening to yourself is the beginning of all true communication. At its core, active listening is an act of love. Love for the other person, for the present moment, for the value of dialogue. And you don't need to be an expert to start practicing it. You just need to be willing to be present, to set ego aside, to make space for the other. Because in that space is where connection, trust, and the potential for transformation are born. In a conversation where both people truly listen, no one leaves the same as they entered. And you, as an eloquent communicator, can be the one to spark that change, simply by choosing to listen better. And in that quiet gesture, you'll be saying more than 1,000 words ever could. Chapter 7. How to Tell Stories That Connect. Storytelling is one of the oldest and most powerful skills humans have for communicating, connecting, and persuading. Since ancient times, around the fire or in village squares, stories have served as a vehicle to transmit knowledge, values, emotions, and culture. In today's world, where information is abundant and attention is scarce, the art of storytelling becomes even more crucial. A good story not only captures attention but also creates an emotional experience that sticks in the memory and moves people to action. Understanding the power of storytelling is essential for mastering any form of communication, whether it's presentations, sales, leadership, or everyday conversations. Storytelling is much more than narrating events. It's about crafting a narrative with meaning, coherence, and emotional impact. A powerful story typically follows a structure that has been used by storytellers throughout history and can be summarized in 3 essential acts: setup, conflict, and resolution. In the setup, you introduce the context and characters. In the conflict, you reveal the challenge or problem to be faced. And in the resolution, you show how the conflict is overcome or what lesson is learned. This narrative tension keeps the listener engaged and emotionally involved, because we all relate to the experience of facing difficulties and searching for solutions. A story that truly connects must be authentic and relevant to the audience. It's not about inventing grand, fantastical tales, but rather choosing real anecdotes and examples that reflect universal human experiences such as fear, hope, failure, triumph, or transformation. When you share a story based on your personal experience or real events, you transmit credibility and humanity. This builds trust and empathy, essential ingredients for persuading and connecting. Stories also allow the audience to see themselves in them, to imagine themselves in the situation described, creating an emotional bridge that enhances both understanding and memory. To make a story impactful, it's important to include sensory and emotional details. Describing places, sounds, smells, or sensations makes the narrative vivid and real. Using visual and emotional language invites the listener to immerse themselves in the experience. It's also advisable to maintain a good pace, alternating moments of tension with pauses that allow the story to sink in. Speaking expressively and using body language to accompany your words brings the story to life and makes it more persuasive. A powerful technique within storytelling is the inclusion of characters who face dilemmas or significant decisions. Characters act as vessels through which the audience can experience emotions and reflect on their own challenges. For example, telling how a friend overcame a fear of public speaking or how a team achieved a difficult goal helps illustrate abstract concepts and inspires concrete action. The identification with real or believable characters makes the message more impactful. It's also crucial to adapt the story to the context and audience. Not every story works for every listener. Understanding who is listening, what interests them, what emotions they seek, what problems they face, allows you to select stories that resonate with their experiences. Empathy is the driving force behind effective storytelling. Additionally, knowing when and how to introduce the story within a conversation or presentation is key to maintaining attention and achieving the desired impact. A poorly timed or overly long story can distract and disengage the audience. Storytelling is also a powerful tool for persuasion because it not only informs but also influences beliefs and emotions. Human decisions are shaped by reason, but also by feelings. A well-told story can change perceptions, motivate attitude shifts, and spark commitment. That's why mastering the art of storytelling is essential for those who wish to influence others ethically and deeply. Finally, telling stories that connect requires practice and reflection. Knowing the structure or techniques isn't enough. You must experiment, observe your audience's reactions, adjust your rhythm and content, and always aim for authenticity. Storytelling is an act of vulnerability and generosity. You share a part of yourself so others can understand, feel, and act. When you do that with intention and mastery, your words cease to be mere information. They become experiences that transform. And that is the true power of eloquent communication. Chapter 8. Ethical Persuasion. Persuasion is one of the most powerful, and at the same time, one of the most delicate skills within the art of communication. At its purest essence, to persuade means to influence the decisions and attitudes of others, guiding them toward an idea, an action, or a change. However, it's essential to understand what ethical persuasion is, and what it is not, because this ability is often confused with manipulation, coercion, or deceit. Ethical persuasion is rooted in transparency, respect, and integrity, while manipulation involves exploiting others' weaknesses or ignorance for personal gain at the expense of their well-being. Knowing the difference between these concepts not only protects your reputation, but also builds trust-based, long-lasting relationships. Robert Cialdini, one of the most renowned experts in the study of influence, identified 6 universal principles that explain how to persuade effectively and ethically. These principles are not just applicable in sales or marketing, but in any context where persuasive communication is key, from leading teams to negotiating, teaching, or even navigating everyday conversations. The first is reciprocity, which is based on the idea that people feel compelled to return favors or kind actions. When you offer something of value without expecting anything in return, you create a sense of emotional debt that opens the door to influence. The second is consistency, which stems from the human desire to be aligned with what they've said or done previously. Getting someone to make a small initial commitment makes it more likely they'll accept larger, related proposals later on. The third principle is social proof, which reveals that people tend to follow the actions of others, especially in times of uncertainty. Demonstrating that others have already adopted an idea or behavior creates trust and validates the proposal. The fourth is liking. People are more easily persuaded by those they like or feel a connection with. That's why building rapport and emotional connection is essential. The fifth principle is authority, which highlights that we tend to trust and follow the guidance of those we perceive as experts or knowledgeable figures. Lastly, the principle of scarcity shows that things perceived as rare or exclusive are more desirable and prompt quicker action. Using these principles ethically means applying them to help others make informed and beneficial decisions, not to deceive or pressure them. For example, reciprocity can show up as offering valuable content or genuine support before making a request. Consistency can be leveraged by inviting people to express their values or goals, then showing how your proposal aligns with them. Social proof can be used by sharing authentic testimonials or success stories. Liking is cultivated through being genuine, showing real interest, and demonstrating respect. Authority is strengthened through demonstrated knowledge and credibility. And scarcity should be used honestly, never by fabricating urgency or false limitations. Persuading without manipulating also means being mindful of the emotional and ethical context of others. It's not just about applying techniques, but about developing a deep sensitivity to the needs, desires, and boundaries of those you're communicating with. Ethical persuasion seeks mutual benefit, ensuring that both parties gain something of value from the interaction. This creates enduring relationships built on trust and respect, and avoids the backlash or rejection that arises when someone feels exploited or misled. Moreover, Ethical persuasion demands self-awareness and honesty with yourself. Always ask, am I acting with integrity? Are my intentions genuine? Am I respecting the other person's autonomy? These questions keep your communication on a healthy, sustainable path. In practice, being both persuasive and ethical may require patience, since influencing meaningful change is often a gradual process. But the impact is deeper and more authentic, far more valuable in the long term than a quick win gained at the cost of trust. Ethical persuasion is a delicate dance between influence and respect. It's not a game of manipulation, but an art that requires sensitivity, honesty, and understanding of the principles that drive people. When you apply these principles with integrity, you not only improve your communication skills, but you also build bridges of understanding and collaboration that enrich both your personal and professional life. In this way, mastering ethical persuasion allows you to become a powerful communicator, capable of inspiring positive, lasting change in those around you. Chapter 9. How to be concise and memorable. Being concise and memorable in communication is a skill that separates good speakers from truly great communicators. We live in an age of information overload, where people are exposed to hundreds of messages every day. That's why the ability to say a lot with few words is not only a sign of communicative intelligence, but also a fundamental tool to stand out and ensure your message stays in the listener's mind. Conciseness doesn't mean cutting content or oversimplifying. It means refining ideas, eliminating the unnecessary, and finding the clearest, most direct, and most powerful way to convey the essential. One of the first techniques to achieve this is thinking in mental images. Words that evoke sensations, emotions, or vivid scenes are more likely to stick in the mind than abstract terms. For example, instead of saying, the situation is complicated, saying, we're sailing in rough waters, creates a metaphor that can be felt, visualized, and therefore remembered more easily. This ability to turn concepts into images helps distill complex ideas into understandable and lasting forms. Additionally, using precise examples rather than long, vague explanations brings immediate clarity and reinforces understanding without going in circles. Another key tool is the use of short, punchy phrases, also known as key phrases. These are brief expressions that contain a powerful truth or insight, and they serve as mental anchors in the listener's memory. Great leaders, writers, and communicators have mastered this technique. Phrases like, knowledge is power, less is more, or perfect is the enemy of good, are examples of ideas that encapsulate wisdom in just a few words. These phrases function as meaning capsules that, once heard, tend to be repeated, shared, and easily remembered. Creating your own key phrases requires reflecting on the core of your message and finding an expressive, rhythmic, and simple way to articulate it. Rhythm also plays an important role in memorability. A phrase with a natural cadence and musicality sticks better in the ear and the mind. Repetitions, alliterations, and contrasts are stylistic devices that help your words sound better and, therefore, be more memorable. For instance, think less, act more, or clarity creates confidence, are structures that feel fluid and stick quickly. These techniques not only help emphasize ideas, but also convey confidence and authority in the speaker. To be concise, it's also important to avoid wordiness, that excess of words that clutters the message, scatters attention, and weakens impact. Talking too much to explain the obvious, going around in circles, or filling speech with filler words drains strength and causes confusion. Brevity isn't just about using fewer words, it's about choosing them with more precision. Every word matters, and every sentence should contribute. That's why before speaking, it's worth asking, does this really add value? Can I say it more directly or visually? What if I summarized it in one clear sentence? Structured thinking also helps. Knowing how to organize your ideas before expressing them allows your message to flow logically and coherently, avoiding unnecessary repetition or rambling. An organized mind communicates with precision because each idea connects to the previous one and points toward a clear destination. That mental clarity translates into verbal clarity. Even when discussing complex topics, it's possible to speak with simplicity if you're clear on what you want to say and who your audience is. Additionally, being memorable means creating emotional impact. It's not enough to be brief and clear. What you say must carry meaning, resonance, or usefulness for the listener. Ideas that touch the heart or offer a new perspective on a common problem are more likely to be remembered. That's why linking your messages to values, aspirations, or shared experiences strengthens emotional connection and helps your words leave a lasting impression. Finally, remember that less is more only applies when that less is well chosen. True mastery lies in selecting the essential and expressing it in a way that inspires, guides, or sparks reflection. A great communicator is not the one who speaks the most, but the one whose words live in others' minds long after they're spoken. So, every time you have the chance to speak, do it with intention, with economy of language, and with the pursuit of a phrase that captures the soul of your message. In this way, with practice and awareness, you'll learn to speak with precision, and your words will become seeds of transformation. Chapter 10. Communication in Conflict. Communication during moments of conflict represents one of the most demanding and revealing tests of our eloquence. It doesn't take much skill to speak clearly when everything is calm, but when tension rises, emotions intensify, and differences emerge. That's when a person's true communicative maturity is measured. Maintaining eloquence under pressure is an art that requires not just technical command of language, but also emotional self-control, deep empathy, and a clear intention to build rather than destroy. In confrontational situations, poorly chosen words can spark fires, but they can also put them out. That's why someone who knows how to express themselves with firmness but without aggression, with clarity but without harshness, with presence but without dominance, holds one of the most valuable skills in any area of life. When conflict arises, the first thing that usually happens is our nervous system goes into defensive mode. The body tenses, the mind races, and language becomes reactive. At that moment, impulsiveness threatens to hijack our communication, leading us to say things we don't mean or that don't reflect our true intent. That's why the most important skill is learning to pause, to breathe before responding, to create that small space between stimulus and reaction where awareness can intervene. This pause not only prevents impulsive responses but also allows us to choose our words wisely and control the tone, volume, and facial expression that will accompany our message. A fundamental technique for debating without attacking is to shift from an attacking approach to one of understanding. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," we can say, "From my perspective, I see it differently," or "I'm having trouble understanding that idea. Could you explain it further?" This simple change in language lowers tension and opens the door to dialogue. Using I statements like "I feel," "I perceive," or "I need," instead of "you always," or "you never," decreases the other person's defensiveness. It's a simple but powerful tool that transforms accusatory language into one of personal responsibility. Listening with active attention during a conflict is another essential tool. Often, what the other person truly needs is not to be agreed with, but to feel heard and understood. Validating their emotions doesn't mean agreeing with their position. It means recognizing their right to feel what they feel. Phrases like, "I understand this upsets you," "I see this affects you deeply," or "it seems this is important to you," can diffuse much of the tension. Emotional validation doesn't solve the conflict on its own, but it creates a foundation of respect where resolution can emerge. It's also crucial to pay attention to nonverbal language during tense moments. A harsh stare, a closed-off posture, or a sarcastic tone can sabotage any attempt at reconciliation, even if the words are kind. That's why maintaining an open posture, a calm tone, and a relaxed facial expression sends signals of security and willingness to engage. Alignment between what is said and what is projected is the basis of credible and peace-building communication. Transforming conflicts into opportunities for connection isn't a utopian ideal. It's a real possibility when the focus shifts from winning the argument to understanding the other person. Every disagreement holds a hidden opportunity to discover differing values, refine our ideas, deepen the relationship, or even strengthen mutual respect through honesty. A truly eloquent person doesn't seek to dominate but to understand, negotiate, and bring people closer. This doesn't mean always yielding or avoiding necessary confrontations. It means choosing to face them with maturity, respect, and clarity. During a conflict, it's also vital to remember the main goal of the conversation. Sometimes, in the heat of the moment, we forget that what we really want isn't to win a verbal battle, but to solve a problem, defend a value, or heal a relationship. Staying focused helps us avoid provocations, resist the traps of ego, and return again and again to the higher purpose. Asking yourself, "What do I really want to achieve with this conversation?" gives you direction, keeps you centered, and allows you to speak from intention rather than reaction. Another powerful tool is summarizing and rephrasing what the other person has said before offering your own point of view. Phrases like, "If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is," Or, so your main concern is, help the other person feel heard and also ensure that you've grasped their message accurately. Only after this should you present your perspective. It will be received with more openness and respect. This simple gesture can turn a tense conversation into a more balanced and constructive exchange. Ultimately, eloquence in conflict is not about winning arguments. It's about elevating the level of consciousness in dialogue. It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to grow as a communicator and as a human being. When you learn to express yourself clearly even in difficult moments, to defend your ideas without attacking, and to listen without giving in, you become a natural leader, someone who can guide with words and heal through understanding. Conflict, when well managed, becomes a tool for evolution, both personal and relational. And those who master this art not only communicate better but transform challenges into bridges toward more authentic, deeper, and stronger relationships. Chapter 11. Shining in Everyday Conversations. Shining in everyday conversations doesn't require elaborate speeches or extensive preparation. Often, it's the briefest interactions that have the greatest impact, and it's in those simple, ordinary moments where true eloquence is revealed. A timely smile, a well-phrased question, attentive listening, or a comment that shows genuine interest can turn a casual chat into a meaningful experience for the other person. We often underestimate the power of small talk, but it's in those informal spaces where deep connections, valuable opportunities, and lasting relationships are born. Knowing how to navigate these small exchanges with grace, authenticity, and warmth is a skill that transforms your social, professional, and personal life. One of the keys to shining in these conversations is to shift the focus from "what can I say to impress" to "how can I make the other person feel comfortable and valued?" That is the essence of language that creates closeness. Instead of trying to stand out, focus on how to connect. This begins with something very simple: making eye contact, maintaining an open posture, offering a kind greeting, and showing genuine interest in the other person. You don't need to be naturally charismatic. You just need to be present, undistracted, non-judgmental, and willing to listen actively. Asking open-ended questions is one of the most effective tools for generating smooth, flowing conversations. Instead of asking, "Everything okay?" try, "What's been the most interesting thing that happened to you this week?" Or, "How did you get into what you do?" These types of questions not only break the ice, but also invite more thoughtful, human responses, opening the door to a rich and authentic exchange. When someone feels that you're genuinely interested in what they're saying, they relax and open up more easily, creating a climate of mutual trust. In networking settings, for example, many people feel uncomfortable because they think they have to sell themselves, impress others, or deliver a rehearsed pitch. But the truth is, the most valuable professional connections are built on human affinity, not resumes. Being yourself, showing passion for what you do, listening attentively, and sharing ideas from a place of collaboration rather than competition is what builds genuine bonds. A sincere compliment, a well-told personal story, or even a funny anecdote to break the tension can leave a deeper impression than any formal presentation. In the dating world, eloquence isn't about dazzling with fancy words. It's about showing authenticity. Speaking honestly, without pretension, sharing personal experiences, and making the other person feel seen and heard is key. Avoiding the spotlight, respecting silences, and allowing the conversation to grow naturally will make the experience far more enjoyable for both. Remember that nonverbal language also plays a major role. A warm tone, a soft smile, a slight forward lean while listening. These are all signs of openness and emotional connection. During family gatherings or get-togethers with friends, shining doesn't mean dominating the conversation, but knowing when to contribute and when to step back. A well-placed remark, a comment that sparks reflection or lightens the mood, can shift the tone of the entire meeting. Being aware of how others are feeling, avoiding unnecessary conflicts, and promoting harmony through your words is a subtle yet powerful form of emotional leadership. Another way to build trust in everyday conversations is by sharing small vulnerabilities. When you talk about something personal, a difficulty you overcame, a fear you faced, or a lesson you learned, you invite the other person to be more authentic as well. Human connection grows when we stop pretending to be perfect and start showing who we really are. This emotional openness, combined with empathetic listening and a non-judgmental attitude, creates a safe space where people feel valued and understood. It's also essential to adapt your language to the context. In informal conversation, it's better to use simple, direct, and familiar vocabulary. Avoid unnecessary jargon, overly complex phrasing, or trying to sound more intellectual than the moment calls for. Naturalness is far more valuable than forced sophistication. When you speak as if you're chatting with a good friend, without masks or roles, you create a type of eloquence that isn't learned in books, but arises from human connection. Finally, shining in everyday conversations also means knowing how to end them with elegance. A good closing leaves a pleasant feeling, a sense of gratitude, or admiration. You can finish with a kind phrase, a suggestion to talk again another time, or simply say, "I really enjoyed talking with you, thanks for sharing." These small details, though they may seem minor, make a big difference in how people remember you. Everyday conversations are constant opportunities to sow relationships, build trust, and leave a positive impression. You don't have to speak a lot or be the most outgoing person to stand out. You just need to be present, be authentic, and speak from the heart. When every word you say is aligned with your intention to connect, serve, or support, your eloquence becomes a force that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. And in that art of the everyday, the strongest bonds are built, the most unexpected opportunities arise, and the most memorable moments are created. Chapter 12. Becoming a magnetic communicator. Becoming a magnetic communicator is a legitimate and powerful aspiration, not only for those who wish to influence or lead, but for anyone who wants to leave a positive mark on the people they interact with. True magnetism in speech doesn't come from rigid formulas or perfectly rehearsed techniques, but from a harmonious combination of authenticity and charisma. A magnetic communicator doesn't try to impress, they aim to connect. They don't seek to shine above others, but rather to illuminate through their presence. And that magnetism begins with an internal decision. The choice to be oneself with courage, without disguises or masks, trusting that our story, our energy, and our voice have value. Authenticity is the heart of every memorable communicator. When someone speaks from their truth without pretense, it immediately generates a sense of trust and respect. It's not about sharing everything or being emotionally exposed, but about speaking with coherence between what one thinks, feels, and expresses. People can sense when someone is being genuine, and that naturally draws them in. A message can be technically perfect, but if it doesn't resonate with sincerity, it won't inspire. On the other hand, a simple idea shared from the soul can transform minds and open hearts. The first step to cultivating magnetism in speech, then, is to stop imitating, stop hiding, and begin expressing yourself from your essence. Charisma, meanwhile, isn't a gift reserved for a lucky few. It's a quality that can be nurtured and expanded through intention, practice, and conscious presence. Charisma arises from the energy we project, and that energy is fueled by enthusiasm, clarity of purpose, and mindful attention to the present moment. A charismatic person isn't always the loudest or the one who dominates the stage, but the one who makes others feel better about themselves after hearing them speak. They speak with passion, but also with respect. They express themselves powerfully, but without arrogance. They listen with the same interest they bring to speaking. This combination of inner strength and empathy is what makes their presence truly impactful. Developing presence is an exercise in constant connection between body, mind, and surroundings. It's not enough to be physically present. One must also be mentally and emotionally engaged. A magnetic communicator walks into a room and, even before speaking, projects something, a calming energy, gentle confidence, or warm openness. This is cultivated over time by building habits of body awareness, deep breathing, and congruent nonverbal communication. An upright posture, sincere eye contact, serene gestures, and a steady pace convey authority without the need to dominate. Stage presence isn't just for performances. It's for every interaction where you wish to have a real impact. Another essential element is the voice. The human voice is full of nuance, and when developed with care, it becomes a powerful channel for leadership and inspiration. A clear, warm, well-modulated, and confident voice has the ability to capture attention and stir emotion. It's not about having a perfect voice, but about learning to use it consciously. Controlling volume, varying rhythm, pausing at key moments, and emphasizing certain words with intention. All of these can transform a simple message into an immersive experience. A voice that reflects emotion and resonates with the content being shared brings the message to life, and that's what truly makes an impact. Perhaps the most transformative element of a magnetic communicator is their deeper intention. When someone takes the stage, enters a meeting, or simply talks with a friend, and does so with a genuine desire to serve, to contribute, to touch the life of another, their energy changes. That noble intention, when aligned with the message and body language, becomes irresistible. Magnetism isn't in the form, it's in the substance. It's not about having flawless technique, but about having a powerful reason. The people who inspire are those who speak from deep conviction, from a vision greater than themselves. And that is felt, even before they say a single word. A magnetic communicator also tends to their emotional energy. They don't allow themselves to speak from complaint, judgment, or hopelessness. Instead, they cultivate language that uplifts, awakens possibilities, and honors the dignity of others. They are not naive or unrealistic, but they are constructive. They use their words as tools for transformation, not destruction. When someone can inspire hope in the midst of chaos, offer perspective in confusion, or instill confidence in the face of fear, their communication becomes a refuge, a beacon, a guide. Ultimately, becoming a magnetic communicator is not a destination, but a continuous process. It requires practice, introspection, humility, and courage. It's a dance between self-expression and empathy, between authenticity and influence, between the art of speaking and the gift of listening. But the journey is worth every step, because it doesn't just transform your words, it transforms your relationships, your leadership, your impact on the world. In a world saturated with noise, the voices that resonate most are not the loudest. They are the most authentic, the most conscious, the most connected to the hearts of others. That is the true magic of a magnetic communicator. The ability to touch the invisible, move the essential, and awaken the best in those who listen. Throughout this journey, we've explored the many dimensions that make up truly powerful communication. From the essential foundations of eloquence to the most subtle techniques of ethical persuasion, from mastering body language to the art of listening and telling stories that connect, each chapter has been an invitation to look within and discover the unlimited potential of your own voice. And now, as we reach the end of this audiobook, it's time to take a conscious pause and review the key insights you've integrated on this transformational path. You've realized that eloquence is not a talent reserved for a select few, but a skill that can be cultivated with intention, practice, and awareness. You've learned that impactful communication goes far beyond speaking well. It's about connecting, inspiring, and building bridges where there were once walls. You've identified the myths that were holding you back and understood that the fear of speaking is not a weakness, but a sign that what you have to say truly matters. And most powerfully of all, you discovered how to turn that nervousness into presence, how to channel it to become more alive, more authentic, and more centered in the moment. You've grasped the importance of mental clarity as the foundation of organized communication, and how simplifying doesn't mean watering things down, but rather enriching your message so it arrives with more strength. You opened up to the power of nonverbal language, how your body, your gestures, your gaze, and your energy all speak, sometimes even louder than your words. You practiced the art of intentional speaking, choosing each word with care, using tone and rhythm to bring your ideas to life, and avoiding the trap of empty noise. You understood that listening isn't just waiting for your turn to speak, it's an active act of connection, of empathy, of deep respect for the other. You practiced listening as a tool to understand, to persuade, to create real bonds. You explored the art of storytelling, and how stories don't just entertain. They transform, they heal, they unite. You discovered that a great story doesn't have to be spectacular, it just needs to be true and well told. You reflected on persuasion from an ethical standpoint, realizing that to influence is not to manipulate, but to serve an idea that brings value. You learned the principles that guide our decision-making and how to apply them with honesty and respect. You saw the power of conciseness, of phrases that stick in the mind, of language that not only informs but leaves an emotional imprint. You learned how to stay eloquent even in the middle of conflict, to debate without destroying, to use your words as bridges even in tense moments. You also trained in the art of turning everyday conversations into genuine opportunities to connect. From networking events to heart-to-heart chats with loved ones, you understood how the language of presence, respect, and warmth can turn the ordinary into the memorable. And finally, you stepped into the path of becoming a magnetic communicator. Someone who combines authenticity with charisma, who cultivates a voice that not only informs but inspires and transforms. Now, this closing is not a final point. It's an invitation to keep growing. Your communication skills will continue to expand if you maintain an attitude of constant practice, if you dare to step out of your comfort zone, if you use every interaction as a lab to refine your presence, your listening, and your expression. You can record yourself, ask for feedback, read out loud, observe great communicators, and model what works. You can train in the pause, in the gaze, in the precise word. Every day is an opportunity to polish your expression, to elevate your message, to use your voice as a tool of service, influence, and love. So now, take a deep breath. Because this hasn't just been a communication lesson, it's also been an invitation to remember the immense power you hold when you choose to speak from your truth. Your voice is more than sound. It's energy, it's vision, it's identity. It is a bridge between who you are and who you dream of becoming. Between you and others. Between your present and the future you can build with intention and purpose. Never underestimate the power of a sincere conversation, of a timely word, of a story well told. Everything you desire, everything you long to transform, is, as you now know, just one conversation away. From now on, may you speak less from fear and more from presence. Less from the need for approval and more from the clarity of your vision. May your words not just be decorative, but transformative. And may your voice, tuned with purpose, authenticity, and love, become the channel through which the world hears what only you can say. Because when you speak from the heart, the world, without a doubt, listens differently. So, if this audiobook has inspired you and you're ready to dive even deeper into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click now, and I'll meet you there.